Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dad Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, and today this is a very unique podcast that I'm re-airing from a few years ago to honor the life and legacy of one of my friends, a colleague, a man I deeply respect, Dr. Gregg Jantz. He tragically died in an automobile accident just 2 weeks ago on July 4th. And it was a freak accident with his car flipped over and his life tragically ended. And this man has had such a wide range of impact and influence, not only in our nation, but around the world. He founded the Center, a place of hope in Edmonds, Washington. I referred clients there often and found that Gregg had a unique ability to always make me feel so important as a referring clinician. He would keep me updated, telling me that my clients would receive the best of care, of which every single person I've ever sent for treatment there has come back with positive reports about his whole staff and their care of every single client. I cannot recommend the center high enough. And in this interview that I'm re-airing, which we titled it Insights About Fathering from a Relationship Expert, where Dr. Gregg shares a little bit more of his own story, fathering 2 sons, really investing in their lives to talk about social media, boundaries. And this is a few years ago before it exploded. This is pre-COVID. And yet you'll hear his heart, his gentle manner, where he truly comes alongside people as a trusted confidant. He's not forceful. He just shows up for people. And a couple stories I just wanted to say here before, the interview re-airs here is one of my all-time favorite stories of Dr. Jantz is when I first heard him at a conference. Oh my goodness. I mean, probably 15 years ago. And, again, very, very shy actually in his mannerisms, not forceful, kind of holds back. And he gets up and, he's not working the crowd at all. He just stands and tells stories where his heart is so evident. And I'll never forget the story that he told where he said, I was new to opening the center, so he's still really cutting his teeth on knowing how to meet people where they're at. And he said, we were one of the only treatment centers that worked with children. And a little 6-year-old girl came to the center who was anorexic, and none of the standard interventions were working. And so he said, I was driving around my town and just praying for God to give me wisdom. Okay, isn't that a cool thing? So dad listening, you may not have a clue how to reach your daughter, her heart, her story, meet her at her place of intensity or need. Do what Dr. Jantz did. He simply prayed to God as his father and asked him for wisdom. And he said, the next thing I knew, I was in the strip mall with some different stores and I was doing some errands, and I saw a woman standing over a cardboard box with a sign that read free kittens. So he said, I walked up to her and said, do you have a runt of the litter that's still here? And she said, yes, really? Like no one wants that kitty. He said, that's the one I want. And he said, I took that little kitten home, quote unquote, to the treatment center, took this little kitty to the little 6-year-old girl and said, will you hand feed this kitten? And this little kitty needs you. And as the little girl began to feed the kitten, she began to open up to being refed and nourished. And they both healed and they both thrived. What a creative download he got from God. Talk about something I've never heard before or since. But that gives you a glimpse into the heart of this man who truly behind closed doors was asking God for wisdom in the way he met clients and the way he led his staff and his sons and his wife, his family. One of his sons is now married. He has a daughter-in-law, had a daughter-in-law, I guess I should say. And I just want to tell you another story that as I, have posted this on social media about this tragic loss. I think the only thing comforting my soul is knowing that he's in heaven with Jesus, alive, and knowing that his life here on earth has ended, but his legacy, his impact lives on in all of us, which leads me to then share a story that my friend Felicia Snell, was a longtime therapist as well, that said she once wrote him an email saying, my son's friend is a new student in the field of counseling, and I wonder if you would be willing to, sign and send him a few of your books. Which ones would you recommend for a new counseling student? And she then said she included a blank check and said, fill this in for whatever this costs. And it wasn't long after that she received a box with 20 of his books in it and the blank check returned and said, it's my honor to invest in this student. Feel free to give all of these books to him at no cost. Again, another story reminding all of us that our life on earth is short. We never know when a day may be our last, but the things that we do to love people, to sacrificially give, to go the extra mile, to love people well, is something that lives on long past our days here on earth. So with that background, I wanted to set the stage for you listening to this interview from Dr. Gregg Jantz as you take in the words, whether you're a dad wanting to hear from another dad about how he's raised his sons and how he's invested even in women. He writes books for women from having walked alongside women in his treatment center and in his clinical practice, as well as whether you're a daughter listening. This is also for you to hear from a dad who now is with his Heavenly Father, who has a heart to bring you truth from his heart to yours. So with that said, I invite you to listen in today, soaking in the truths that our friend, Dr. Gregg Jantz, has to share. Enjoy. So today, the guest that I have joining me in the studio is my friend and best-selling author, Dr. Gregg Jantz. Now, there's a really good chance that you've probably already heard his name because listen to this. He's written 35 books. Are you kidding me? Just to name a few of them: Healing the Scars of Emotional Abuse, How to De-Stress Your Life, The Body God Designed, God Can Help You Heal, The Molding of a Champion, and one called Don't Call It Love. Listen to the subtitle, Breaking the Cycle of Relationship Dependency, which is a book that he wrote with Dr. Tim Clinton. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later. You may also have heard of Dr. Gregg Jantz when you've heard him on CNN or Fox or ABC or CBS, or read an interview he's done for the New York Post or Associated Press, Family Circle, Women's Day, Huffington Post, Psychology Today. Okay, need I say more? He also founded a treatment center in Edmonds, Washington in 1984 called The Center, a place of hope, where he and his team treat addictions, eating disorders, depression, anxiety, and they're really focused on what they call whole person care, which I love. Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. He's been married for over 25 years and is the father to 2 sons. And you all know that the main focus here on the Dad Whisperer is to fathers and daughters. But the topics here are also applicable to dads and sons. And though Dr. Gregg isn't a dad to daughters, he's a father, like I said, to 2 sons. And he's counseled so many women that he brings his insights even into his counseling, into the books that he's read. And let me tell you one more story before we start this conversation. I met Dr. Gregg Jantz in 2011 when both of us were in Colorado speaking at an eating disorders conference. And I remember being so struck by the way that this man asked God for wisdom when he knows he's in over his head, even as a clinician. So here we have this seasoned expert, well-respected in the nation and the world, who is saying, God, I'm lost here. Can you come meet me? And his humility is something that has so impacted me. And I'm drawn more to his wisdom because I know he's drawing on God's wisdom as he impacts people in the work that he does. And a few years ago, I read a book that he also wrote called Every Woman's Guide to Managing Your Anger. Okay, how many men write about women's issues? And I was blown away at the way he started out by saying that he knew we as women would think it's strange for him to be writing a book to us as women, but he won me over as he humbly and powerfully shared how he has come alongside so many women as a counselor over the years that he wanted to help us. And he brought scripture in a way that made it come alive. And I'm telling you, people, we have a treat today by having this man join us. And all I want to say is I cannot recommend his books high enough. So, Gregg, thank you for being here today and welcome.
My goodness. Well, it's good to be with you. And I love the topic, and it's dear to my heart.
Well, I love that. So today, the topic, the On Your Mark theme is insights about fathering from a relationship expert, Dr. Gregg Jantz. Well, now let's do the get set part where we're filling in the conversation about you as a fathering, a relationship expert. Maybe you don't consider yourself a fathering expert, but a relationship expert, and we know that all falls in place together. But before we get into our questions and answers, I would just love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit more first, Gregg, specifically when it comes to the topic of fathering. So tell us a little bit of your story about your upbringing and how your dad modeled to you what being a father looks like.
You know, I grew up in the Bible Belt of Kansas and the wheat fields and the dust of Kansas.
Uh-huh.
And so I am the oldest of two in my family. And I have a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think back with my father and what did I really carry? He taught me about faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was faithfulness to not my mother, but it was faithfulness in a relationship. And so I learned that, okay, one of the key ingredients I'm gonna need, if I want this to work out, I'm gonna need to be faithful and faithful to the cause.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
that really is what stands out.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, that you had that model set for you, which clearly is evidenced, 30 years plus leading the center up in Washington is you stay the course. You know, your loyalty is clearly a reflection of your dad. Now, you said that you have a sister. From what you watched, was your dad's relating to her different than it was to you, or was it a lot the same?
Well, that's a good question. I think with my sister, there's this specialness in a father-daughter relationship. And I remember growing up, I think the sister smile, the daughter smile,
Mm-hmm.
and the connection. And I think my sister early on also received the father's blessing.
Ah. Has that impacted how you've been a dad to sons?
Yes, as I think about what it means to have a father's blessing. And one of the things that comes to my mind is, because I have two boys,
Mm-hmm.
I have one that's an 8th grader, that's Benji, and I have a senior in high school. And so I'm in the middle of this, and what does it mean? And teaching them, how does a teenager have successful relationships with females and with other friends? How do we do this? So I'm right in the middle of this.
You really are. Two teenagers, my word, I'm sure you have a few more gray hairs. But I love, Gregg, how you're highlighting the fact that you are modeling to your men how to treat women by the way that you treat your wife and what you're instilling in them.
We live in an age and in a culture where there's a lot of mixed and not good messages for our men as it relates to our boys, as it relates to women, how to treat women. If the average age to exposure to pornography on the internet's about age 9 and 10, we start to see some things early on that really confuse us about how do I have a healthy relationship with a girl?
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, now that you brought that up, which I'm so glad you did, can you speak to anything that fathers can do who have sons to help guard their minds and spirits with regards to pornography?
Well, the key words were guard, the mind, and the spirit. So we know that we live in a sexualized culture. You can drive down the road and there's a billboard and you go, wow, I didn't ask to see that. Or
Exactly.
You're standing in line at the supermarket and all the magazines, you go, what in the world? So we live in a world that is bringing unhealthy sexuality right to us.
Absolutely.
And so we have decisions to make every day. So we need to teach, and our girls too, but we need to teach them we got to make good, life-giving decisions every day. So, where am I going to dwell? Where am I putting my mind? And why is that important? So we talk about, when you say with boys, well, we just keep it an open topic. It doesn't mean we talk about it all the time.
Right.
But we talk about one of the things that we do one night a week, we have a digital dinner and digital dinner means we can talk about anything technology. And it's the one time we can do that. So it's like, what are kids into? What are the apps? What have you ever received an inappropriate picture? Just have a time and place where we talk about these things versus pretend they don't happen.
That's
because,
awesome.
It's out there, and we got to help our kids, help our boys navigate this.
Yeah. So do you think it's even okay, as I'm speaking to you as a father and a clinician, to have dads regularly checking their kids' phones and their internet? Or you think that's too invasive?
No, I think we've got to decide what are our family values and then what's our technology values. Mm-hmm. So we have a technology agreement. Beginning every year, we review it together. And at my 8th grader this year, at the New Year, said, "Dad, I don't need to. We've already done this, don't you know? I've already signed it." And I said, "Oh no, we're going to look at it." But as we get older, it changes some.
You're right.
So there's teaching them. Impulse control. There's teaching them self-responsibility, because it's not a phone they're carrying around. They're carrying around a device that's a portable computer. So we talk about it, and we decide what are our rules around it. So in our home, phones or devices go on the charger at a certain time, or you don't have it the next day. At certain ages, of course, mom and dad have passwords, and we talk together about what's appropriate, what's not, what's okay to download. Kids are into a lot of live video these days, and there's the direction where that's going is not good.
Absolutely.
But talking to kids about this and what to do, boy or girl, what to do. What if you get an inappropriate text or something comes your way? What do you do? How do you respond? So those are important things to talk about.
Oh, I love it. Well, I love that we've just had this conversation about you even shaping the hearts and the spirits of your sons, because dads listening to this, some of them have sons and not daughters. But now let's flip to that other side of daughters is, having been a clinician for over 3 decades, and you've no doubt walked alongside many women and heard stories even of father wounds or the father void that isn't there. And you work a lot with addictions, whether drug or alcohol or eating disorders. And I just wonder if you could shed some light on the way that a woman's relationship with her father affects those kinds of issues.
Well, and here's the thing. You may have had a father, maybe there was addiction in the family. Mm-hmm. Or maybe there was a lot of unmet emotional needs. Maybe you grew up in a family where maybe there was a lot of rageaholic and anger or fear. So we can take that and we can build from that, because we don't have to repeat that cycle. And so you may have found yourself as a female in some unhealthy relationships, and part of it may have been just the belief that I don't deserve anything better, or I have to have this because I probably won't have anybody else. And so maybe there's been some unhealthy patterns. So the first thing we want to do is, what's my relationship patterns? Am I making decisions to be in relationship with males, with men, that is life-giving, respectful? Do I feel honored? Am I being treated when I'm around this person? Does it increase my value, or do I feel guilt and shame? And so what's the feeling when I'm around? And begin to shape, what's a healthy relationship? So sometimes we've got to even just figure out, what is that? What is a healthy relationship?
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate how you're saying that foundation was laid for all of us in our family of origin, right? Where we learn how to do relationships. And if we've had either a hostile dad or maybe a dad that's been too busy elsewhere, even in ministry, right? That we're talking to ministry leaders too. And if women listening today are going, oh my word, you're describing me and I have no idea what that means to look at it, I want to really highly recommend the book that you wrote with Dr. Tim Clinton, who's the president of the American Academy of Christian Counselors Association. And it's called Don't Call It Love, Breaking the Cycle of Relationship Dependency, which is a lot of what you're talking about those attachment relationships that we learned early on.
that when you use the word attachment, Michelle, I mean, am I attaching to things that are healthy, or am I having trouble even attaching? And because that's going to tell me a lot about how do I handle intimacy.
Uh-huh.
Can I be close to somebody, emotionally close? What's my understanding around intimacy? So when we look at fathers and daughters, the question is, what have I been taught about intimacy and close relationships?
Yeah. Well said. And if you're just joining us now, I want you to know that I'm talking with relationship expert Dr. Gregg Jantz, author of over 35 books, founder of the Center, A Place of Hope in Edmonds, Washington. And he is teaching us today from his experience more about dad-daughter dynamics. And Gregg, I would love to just quote a section out of your book, Don't Call It Love, Breaking the Cycle of Relationship Dependency, because as you and I prepared for this conversation, you even said, I think this would be a book that probably would apply to a lot of your female listeners, daughters that have dad issues that are being worked out and oftentimes repeating destructive cycles in their relationships with men. And here's one thing you said is, our relationships are supposed to give us love, strength, encouragement, and affirmation. Our relationships are supposed to tie us to others in positive, uplifting ways, but sadly, some do not. And you do talk about different attachment styles and say that your attachment experiences are integral to your ability to form and maintain relationships. And I loved how you added even your relationship with yourself. And you said each one of us are hardwired by God to operate best within a safe and secure parent-child attachment or relationships. And both you and I, because we're clinicians, we've walked alongside so many people for years who suffer the impacts of broken attachments with their family of origin, many of the times with dads. And because we're talking about that dad-daughter thing, can you comment on how can someone heal who hasn't had the best role model of a healthy relationship with how dad treated her?
Yes, when we find ourselves in a place we haven't had a good role model, first of all, we got to do number one. We got to create awareness of what's unhealthy. What is my patterns? Am I looking for my value, all my value, or my self-esteem, just in a relationship with a man? Am I finding that sexuality is being misused, or that's an area of confusion? So a healthy relationship, yes, there's challenges, of course, but a healthy relationship, we're empowered, and we're going to feel respected. We're going to feel honored in who we are, and so it's a different feeling. I'm not trying to earn love. So in a relationship, am I trying to earn my love, or am I doing things that are really against my values in order to feel a sense of love? And I'm just going to say, well, that's probably not love.
Exactly. And I love how you talked about increasing awareness. And if you're listening and go, okay, how do I increase awareness? You've got to get this book, Don't Call It Love, Breaking the Cycle of Relationship Dependency, because there are all kinds of questions and assessments where you can go deeper into looking at yourself in really clear ways that will help you have more awareness of perhaps how you're trying to rework in current relationships, the brokenness with your father. And I'm telling you, women that are listening, it doesn't work that way. I mean, even though we hurt within the context of relationship and we heal within the context of relationship, and like you said, when we're respected in a current relationship, it does help to rework that old broken mindset and those tapes that play. But I think more often than not, from what I see in my counseling office, is that women keep looking for love in all the wrong places,
Yes, absolutely. So, and here's the good news. We can change. Now, don't try to just change the person you're with, but we can change.
Yeah.
And there is hope. We can begin and go, okay, this is what a healthy relationship is, and I can begin to really work on that.
Yeah.
And you can change, and you can be in a different place in your relationships, with your relationships with men, and you may discover, there's certain things that I allowed before that really I'm realizing now are terribly unhealthy, and So you're making adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, I really believe that pray for wisdom in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We can, with God's help, we can do this. Sometimes we're going to need some outside help to encourage and give us accountability and provide us some insights. But I just want to speak a good word over. If you want a healthy relationship, this can be done.
Oh, I love that, because if a woman hasn't had a father figure saying, you can heal, you can change this, you can move beyond the brokenness that was handed down to you, you're telling them. I mean, Gregg, it almost seems like, in a way, when you just said that, I have this sense that you're being like a surrogate father. If someone didn't have a dad, have you ever been in that role with any of the women that you've counseled or at the center where they've said, you know what, you've been like a surrogate dad to me?
Well, one of the things that my hopes would be is that if they can have a healthy relationship and with me, and we can model what's appropriate in boundaries, and because we can use this as a springboard then for other relationships. So my hopes would be that I've been a healthy model for them, and they've learned how to be treated appropriately.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Because the center treats women 18 and up, I imagine that a lot of your focus is on adult women. And I wonder, Gregg, could you just speak to what effects do you see that fathers have even with their adult daughters in terms of healing?
It could be the person, let's say she's in her 30s and she's here and she's still struggling with a father wound or not feeling validated, not feeling that she was good enough for her dad, or felt that she was always criticized. And so she's here today and she's struggling, she's depressed about herself. And we want to be careful. We can't just say, "Oh, it's all my dad's fault." So we're not going to carry a spirit of blame, but we want to understand, well, what happened here?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe what I've got to do is, even though I'm an adult, maybe there's some forgiveness that needs to come in play, or maybe I need to also release that. He's never going to necessarily change. It's me that's going to change, and I may have gotten some faulty messages about who I am. It's the dad who may have said, "Well, why can't you be more like your sister? Look at her," and you never felt like you were good enough.
Yeah, which I think is a beautiful segue into another thing I wanted to bring up today, because at the end of that book on Don't Call It Love, you and Dr. Tim talk about how spiritual dependency overcomes relationship dependency. And here's something that you wrote in there. As you grow in your knowledge and understanding of and trusting God, we believe you will become closer to that secure attachment. And you have worksheets that can guide someone, as I said earlier, through a healing process. Because for those who haven't yet bought that book or worked through their, quote, dad issues, could you offer one practical step toward healing in terms of a relationship with God as a heavenly Father that could help to heal that wound with a father?
Yes, one step you may need to do, and just sit down with a journal and just say, "Oh, Lord God, show me." And I want you to, you're probably pretty familiar with the shortcomings of what you feel like you didn't get, but I also want you to take and go, make some notes about what your father did that was good. And you go, "Well, I can't think of anything." Well, it may be as simple as, did you have food and shelter? Yeah, I did, but I never saw him. I didn't know him. Well, what was good? I want you to be able to, and we're going to build upon what was good. Now, today, for fathers still alive, and maybe you still have a relationship with them, are you holding on to some expectations that he's going to suddenly change from where he was, and maybe there's times where a dad may go, "Oh, I do see," and there's forgiveness and there's a new establishment of a relationship. That does happen, but other times it doesn't. So, but you need to know you can go on with your life, and God can bring other healthy men and role models in your life, and you can have really a redemption of needs met in a whole different way. So our earthly fathers, for whatever reasons, could be addiction, could be other things. Maybe they didn't learn about how to be a dad. Maybe they came from a family and it's been a long legacy of just unhealthy relationships, and they didn't know how to be the best. So we just need to put that in its proper place, because your well-being today doesn't have to be dependent upon what you got or didn't get from your father.
That is such a life-breathing way to put it, Gregg, because I can even say for myself is the more I've heard stories from my dad about what he didn't get, and it has given me more compassion in my adult life to relate to my dad in a different way, because I appreciate that you brought up the idea of expectations, because I've had those with my dad. And then when he doesn't fulfill them, right, it hurts all over again. And really saying, God, you as a father are the only one who can truly meet my deepest heart needs. You don't let me down. My expectations from you get met. And I so appreciate you highlighting that. Well, we've only got about a minute left. So I always like to end each program with a go plan of action, a go step. If you were to offer one piece of advice to dads who are listening today, you've just given some great insight to daughters who are listening, but what is one way that a dad could put his heart of love into action this week with his daughter?
I think one of the things you could do right away as a dad is think about the words that you're using, and use words that represent gratitude. And even to say, in some way, I am so glad that you're my daughter. But give a word of affirmation this week, but focus on that word gratitude, and find a way to show gratefulness for your daughter, but do it through some words.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, on your mark today, the topic has been insights about fathering from a relationship expert, Dr. Gregg Jantz. If you want more of his resources, you can go to his website, drgregoryjantz.com, Jantz, and he has blogs there and resources, links to books you can buy. You've heard from him today, and I just want to thank you so much, Gregg, for joining us today. It's been an honor to have you on The Dad Whisperer.
Oh, it's good to talk with you, and such a great topic.
Thanks, Gregg.